Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest is an applied developmental psychologist, the founder and CEO of the Mentor Project, and the author of the nonfiction book, The Mentorship Edge, Creating Maximum Impact Through Lateral and Hierarchical Mentoring. Her name is Deborah Heiser, and my interview with Deborah will follow the note-taking sounds. Dr. Deborah Heiser, did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did.
Welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
You are an applied developmental psychologist. How does that differ from other types of psychologists?
Well, if most people think of a clinical psychologist when they hear the word psychologist, and the difference is that a clinical psychologist is looking at pathology, things that could be wrong. And an applied developmental psychologist is looking at everything we should expect across our lifespan from birth until the end of our life.
You're the CEO of what I believe is a nonprofit organization called the Mentor Project. What
Yes.
does the Mentor Project do?
We bring the top 1% experts in their fields to mentor students around the world for free.
How are you able to get these high-profile experts?
Well, basically, this is where my applied developmental psychology knowledge comes into play. We are built to want to give back when we hit midlife. And there are three different ways we give back as people. We mentor, we volunteer, or we engage in philanthropy, which is donating money. And so people are really in need of wanting to be able to give back, and they don't have places to do that. So people have contacted us and said, I'd like to mentor, I'd like to give back. So we have never had a problem where we've had to go out and sort of recruit mentors. They come to us and say, I'm interested in giving back.
You've written a nonfiction book titled The Mentorship Edge. Without spoiling too much of The Mentorship Edge, what is it about?
It's defining mentorship. The word mentor has been used so loosely, and it's been hijacked by corporate America to mean something that often people think it only has to do with work. And that's one of the just smallest places that mentorship is really involved in. So I define mentorship. I talk about its origins and where it came from and how it really is a part of our personal life as well as it can be in our work life. And the ways that it looks both laterally and hierarchically. I also say what it isn't. It's not coaching. It's not networking. It's not being sponsored. And I give a lot of examples from people's personal lives, from Charlie Camarda, the astronaut who was saved in space by a mentor, to people who started the tech revolution, and on, from grandmas to, people who do all kinds of mentorship across the board. So that's really what the book has in it for people.
You mentioned a little bit about what mentorship is and isn't in your previous question. Can you elaborate a little more on what is and isn't mentorship, and how has the corporate world here in the United States used the term mentorship to describe things that aren't mentorship?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and first start by defining mentorship. Mentorship, it has sort of 5 ingredients to it. And it's like if you were to make brownies and leave out sugar, it would look like brownies, but it wouldn't taste like brownies. So mentorship is the same kind of way. And a lot of times it'll look like mentorship in some way, and it's not. And what we need, first of all, is somebody who is generative, somebody who says, I want to give something back. And most of us in midlife have gotten to a point where we feel like we're experts in something or we know something. And so this is something that we're built to do. And it doesn't have to be in midlife, but oftentimes we hit a point we say, I know enough. I can help other people. Now, when we're giving out our information, we need somebody who wants what we're giving. So you have to have a match in that sense that somebody's saying, I'd like to teach you about podcasting. My name is Aaron, and I'd like to teach you, Debbie, about podcasting. And I have to want to learn about podcasting. So that's the first part. That's being generative. You have to want to give that back to somebody who wants to receive it. The second thing is it has to be intrinsically motivated. You have to want to do it without getting paid, without getting any kind of an award or reward. Maybe nobody will even know that you're doing it, but you have to want to do it because you want to do it. And the next thing is you have to have a meaningful connection with that person. There has to be that you have to like each other. So if, you meet me and you say, you know what, Debbie's a nice enough person, but I don't know that I want to really spend time connecting with her. It's just not the best connection. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means that it's not a mentoring connection. There also has to be trust. The mentor has to trust that the mentee is going to take that information they're giving and that they're going to incorporate it into what they know and do something with it. That they're not going to run away and steal their idea. That they're not going to just disregard the information. And likewise, the mentee has to feel like they can be vulnerable around the mentor and feel like that person is going to take that information and not say, ooh, I didn't know that they didn't know this. I'm not going to put them up for a job promotion, or, ooh, I didn't know that person didn't know this. I'm going to go tell all the neighbors. And finally, there has to be a goal. It could be a one-time only goal. Hey, show me the lay of the land of this new school or this new job or whatever it is. And then once you learn it, you're good. Or it could be that your goal shifts and changes over time. So the way that corporate America has looked at this and taken it is that it becomes a part of the job description in a way in many places where mentoring is expected. And that removes the intrinsic motivation. Once you're expected to do something, either somebody is going to give you a performance evaluation, or if you're not doing it, that you're thought of less in some way, if you're not either a mentee or a mentor. That is where it sort of gets put into place as that is not mentorship then. If a person is being paid to mentor, they are not a mentor. You are a coach or you're something else. It doesn't devalue what you're doing. It's just not mentorship. So what I've seen is that a lot of programs don't work. They'll put a blind match together, and if people don't match up well, they're too insecure or feel too vulnerable to say this isn't a good match because they think that somebody's going to judge them in some way. So they go through just meeting, but not really mentoring. So a lot of programs fail because it's not an actual true match. It looks like it. It's like the sugarless brownies. It looks like it, but it isn't really mentorship.
I'm going to pivot back to your book, The Mentorship Edge, for the next few questions. What motivated you to write your nonfiction book?
I was motivated to write it because I was hearing and seeing so many people use mentorship, that term mentor and mentorship, in a way that doesn't really describe accurately what mentorship is. People use that term so loosely. And I thought, we have an opportunity to really get people connected and engaged in mentorship, but they aren't doing it because they think it's something else. And so I wanted to write the book to show just how often we mentor and are mentored and we don't even know it, and that we should be engaging in it correctly, in actual true mentorship, really often, because it makes us live longer, healthier, happier lives.
How long did it take you to write The Mentorship Edge?
I started really with the concept in about 2015, and I pitched it to publishers, and it just wasn't landing well. Then when I started the Mentor Project, and it's been around for about 5 years, the concept started to get noticed. More people were writing about mentorship and doing things. And so once I finally sat down with a contract in hand from Wiley, it took me about 3.5 months to write it, but nobody should say, oh, that's how long it takes. No, I had been writing about mentorship and engaged in mentorship and running a global, mentoring program for 5 years. So it really is a complicated answer.
What are the easiest and hardest aspects of writing a nonfiction book for you?
The easiest part for me was once I had the concept of what I wanted to say, the easy part was filling it in. The harder part was what kind of feel do I want to have for this book? What do I want it to really say? Because I could write days and days, chapters and chapters on different aspects of mentorship. But the hardest part was saying, what do I want to say in this book? What's the real theme of it?
Now, you mentioned that Wiley published the Mentorship Edge. Now, that's a traditional publisher. Is that correct?
Yes.
What is your best advice that you would have for nonfiction authors that are looking to have their books traditionally published?
I think that for me, most important thing I think that Wiley saw was that I had a platform. It was clear that I'm an expert in it. I'm running a mentoring organization. I didn't just do that out of nowhere. I have a background in psychology and research that, I was able to really talk about it from a developmental perspective. And I had been already writing and showing that I'm a contributor for Psychology Today, and I have a Substack as well. So I think that if you are already writing and you are already an established expert in something, that is very valuable to you for writing a nonfiction book.
In addition to your nonfiction book, you've written peer-reviewed academic articles. What are some topics you've written academic articles about?
So I started my career in geriatric research, and I was studying everything that no one wants to have or get. So my papers were on depression and palliative care and elder abuse, things like that. So I did shift from that to what we have to expect as we grow older, which is positive stuff. Part of that is mentoring.
You mentioned your background in geriatric research. And I have this question written down. It's actually a two-part question. What can people look forward to as they age, and how can people who are near retirement age prepare for retirement from a mental standpoint?
Sure. So what we should expect is that we get happier as we grow older. Most people think of our lives as a physical trajectory, and that makes sense. I thought of that too. But most of us don't think of our emotional journey. So those don't always coincide with each other. As we are getting older, our bodies are, getting frailer in many ways. Like I need reading glasses and I didn't before, and I'm slower at running, things like that. However, our emotional journey goes up. It continues to go up. It never declines. And so as I have needed reading glasses and started moving more slowly, I'm happier. And I should expect to get happier and happier as I get older, or more fulfilled, more content with my life. And that's what most people don't know. They think that only of themselves as having a physical journey, and that their emotions will be in line with that physical journey. And that's a myth. That's something that is not true. So to answer that first part, we can expect to be happier as we get older. And I don't remember what the second part was. What was the second half of the question?
How can people who are near retirement age prepare for retirement from a mental standpoint?
What people should do when they're preparing for retirement, or this is well in advance of retirement, is most of us identify with our job title or our company, and that is where we feel like we get all of our satisfaction or power or our identity. And so we need to really look at ourselves and say, what else do I engage in? What else do I like? What else am I passionate about? What is it outside of work that makes me who I am? And that's very helpful, because then when you retire, you can go and start engaging in those activities, whether it's volunteering, mentoring, philanthropy, or maybe taking on a whole nother job. A lot of people retire and then they start a company, or they go work for some other place just because they still love working. But we need to, at all times, really be thinking of our identity, and not just as our business card, but as our identity and who we are outside of what we do for our money.
One final question for this interview. How can people bring other people from different generations to work together to solve challenges?
How can we bring people from different generations to solve challenges?
Bring people from different generations together to work to solve challenges.
Oh, well, that's a great one. You can never really solve a problem if you are in a vacuum. And if so for example, if I want to know what is the perception of, a product or something, and I'm a salesperson and I'm trying to sell to a generation that is younger than me, I should not be relying on myself. I should be working with that other generation so that I can get their viewpoint. They are an expert in their generation. I am not. Likewise, when we bring multiple generations together, there are different components of that generation that they have lived through and that they understand, and they have a different vantage point. So if it's tech, it might be that somebody who was around in the beginning of a tech, some kind of a tech revolution, they may have an insight into what path to take that might be the most useful. Whereas another generation might say, I know the cutting edge new thing that's out there. And so bringing generations together brings different perspectives and allows us to move forward in a way that is really going to make a much bigger impact on the outcome of whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.
Deborah, thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast. You were an amazing guest.
Thank you for having me. You're an amazing host.
I enjoyed interviewing Deborah about her book and her work in psychology and mentoring. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. Copyright 2025, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.